Metcash's recent D365 failure, and how to find the best D365 partners and resellers. Those are just two of the topics we're going to cover here in our premiere episode 1 of the Journey to D365 podcast.
Welcome to Journey to D365, the podcast that covers everything related to Microsoft Dynamics 365 implementations. This podcast is not affiliated with Microsoft and covers the realistic truth behind D365 finance and operations and Business Central ERP implementation success. Whether you're new to the world of Microsoft or not, this podcast is for you. Now, here's your host, Eric Kimberling.
Hello, welcome to episode number 1 of the Journey to D365 podcast. This is the podcast that covers everything you need to know about Dynamics 365 implementations, including the good, the bad, the ugly. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world, not only with D365 implementations, but for digital transformations involving all sorts of different technology platforms. We're an independent tech agnostic company, and this podcast is meant to be independent from Microsoft. It is not financed by Microsoft or any other Microsoft partners. So you get to hear the whole truth, but nothing but the truth related to D365 implementations. And joining me as my co-host is Darian Fiakuski. Darian, thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited for this new podcast.
Yes, new podcast series. It sort of augments our weekly Transformation Ground Control podcast, which is a tech agnostic podcast that covers all things related to technology in general, including digital transformations. You can listen to that podcast by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. But this podcast is focused on Dynamics 365, and you can find current and future episodes of this podcast by going to journey2d365.com. So thank you for being here today. The show is produced by Major Tom Productions and sponsored by Third Stage Consulting Group, the independent tech agnostic consulting firm that I'm part of and that I just mentioned a moment ago. And I've got a great show for you today. We're going to bring on a guest here later today, Rick McCutcheon, who is going to be on the show talking about how to find the best D365 partners and resellers. He's got a podcast that we're going to talk about here in just a few minutes, and his podcast is really focused on the reseller and the value-added reseller community within the Microsoft space. So he knows a lot about different Microsoft partners and can give us some good advice on how to find the best D365 partner. But before we jump into that, we also want to get into this case study, recent news just within the last couple months about in Australia. A big retailer called Metcash had a pretty significant failure in their D365 project. So we're going to get to that in a moment. But before we do that, what kind of a social media question do you have that we want to cover here in today's podcast, Darian?
Yeah, so our social media question today is from YouTube, and it's justify why it is important to align implementation of integrated management systems with organizational structure.
Yeah, it's a great question. So why is it important to align systems with organizational structure? And, when you look at technology today, especially with Copilot and on the AI side and some of the emerging tech that is coming out from Microsoft, there's a lot of changes that it can entail and a lot of enhancements and improvements that it can entail for an organization. But if you're really going to get the business value out of these new enhanced emerging technologies, you really have to align your people in your organization with that technology and vice versa. So, if you're going to automate someone's job or make someone's job easier and assign them new tasks, you need to really have a clear, deliberate strategy for what that job is going to look like in the future. Because more often than not, when organizations don't do that, people start to panic. They start to worry about what's going to happen to my job now that we've got Copilot and some of the AI capabilities that Microsoft has introduced. Is that going to take away my job? And if you don't provide a vision for how that person's job is going to look in the future and what's going to be different about it, they're oftentimes going to assume the worst. So from a change management perspective alone, you want to make sure that you have that clarity. And certainly in order to realize the business value of your investments in Microsoft products, you want to make sure that you're doing the same, because that's really where you're going to get the value, is combining and aligning people and technology along with processes too. So it's a really important step in the process, easier said than done, but something that absolutely has to be done if you want to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a great question from YouTube. And audience, so you guys know, if you listen to the regular podcast, we do social questions every single week. So if you do have any questions, you can comment on this podcast or any other of our social media channels, and we'll be sure to answer those the best we can on any of our podcasts.
Perfect. And then we've got this news with the the Microsoft D365 implementation failure, which is at Metcash in Australia. So what we recently posted a video about that, but what were some of your thoughts or summary of that case study, Darian?
Yeah, so like Eric said, a video was recently posted to Eric's YouTube channel if you want to watch that on YouTube to get more information as well. But Eric, could you tell us what happened with this failure here? Can you just give us a brief overview of the project?
Yeah, and like you said, it is something that we go into a lot more detail in the YouTube video. But just to summarize, first of all, Metcash is a diversified retailer based out of Australia. I don't recall if they have operations outside of Australia as well, but I do know they're a pretty significant, pretty large retailer in the region there. But they're a diversified retailer. They had budgeted 80 million US, I believe it's US dollars, to implement Microsoft D365, and that $80 million budget quickly ballooned to 300 million or close to 300 million budget. And the go live date kept getting pushed out from, I think originally it was supposed to be 2023, then it got pushed to 2025, and then further out from there. And, some of the things that they talked about in their assessment, there's some public information that's out there that talks about their own findings and their own assessment of what went wrong, which is the good thing about, when a failure like this happens at a really big company like that, if it's publicly traded or whatever, oftentimes there's a publicly published report on what happened and sort of a postmortem on what went wrong with the project. But some of the things they mentioned in the report, in the readout from this project, are, first of all, they said that there were complexities of standardizing their business processes, which was very difficult for them as an organization. And they implemented D365 with this vision of standardizing processes, but apparently that was a lot more difficult than they thought. Whether that was a problem with the software or a problem with the business changing to fit the software, I don't know, but there was clearly some misalignment there. Back to your question earlier, the audience question about, aligning organizational structure with technology. It sounds like that might have been a challenge for these guys as well. They also talked about how they were sold an unrealistic vision, which was really interesting choice of words. And I don't know if it was their system integrator, who, by the way, was KPMG, was the system integrator. I'm not sure if it's KPMG or if it's Microsoft or both that sold them this unrealistic vision. I don't know what was unrealistic about it, other than perhaps based on experience. And if I were to speculate, I'd suspect they probably were overly optimistic on how long the project was going to take, how much money it would cost, and how much difficulty it would be. So I'd suspect that Metcash went into this project not knowing or fully understanding how complex and costly and risky it would be. There was also some interesting dynamics too, where they were looking for one vendor. They wanted to sort of go all in on one vendor, and they had evaluated SAP and Microsoft. And apparently there were some internal biases toward SAP and against Microsoft. And I think from what I gathered from reading that report, it sounds like that those internal biases for SAP caused some sort of headwinds, for implementing D365, because the pro SAP camp was sort of pushing back on the idea of implementing D365. And, if you've ever been in that situation before, that can get pretty toxic and unhealthy pretty quickly when people start second guessing everything that Microsoft can and can't do, because we might have been better off if we just implemented SAP. Those sorts of, that sort of doubt starts to creep into the organization, which can be difficult. They didn't have a lot of great project governance, so the project was sort of just delegated off on the side and did not report up to the CEO until later. I believe later, when the project started to have trouble, then they had the project report up to the CEO. But by then, you've already wasted a lot of time and money at that point. And then, the last thing I'll say is that they appear to have lost a bit of control over the project too, because they had at one point 200 consultants on the project, plus their in-house resources, plus PricewaterhouseCoopers was providing quality assurance on the overall project. So they just had a massive footprint of consultants at one point. And I think they sort of, when you get that many consultants involved in a project, you start to forget who you are, and, you start to lose control of the project because you've got all these consultants that are just running the project for you. So, I think they're starting to correct some of this stuff, and we'll see how it unfolds. But those are some of the things that, we gathered in our research from trying to understand what went wrong with this particular case study.
Yeah, that's a super good overview of what maybe happened with the project. Now that I guess the audience knows what happened with the project, could you explain some of the takeaways that you can gather from a project like this, or some of the lessons you can learn from a failure like this?
Yeah, I mean, if I had to pick two things, I'd say one is go in with a realistic idea with your eyes wide open. I mean, you're not an expert most likely if you're an organization that's going through a D365 implementation. Chances are pretty high you're not an expert in D365. You're not an expert in software implementations, or else you wouldn't be doing what you're doing as a company. So it's understood that you're going to rely on outside experts, but you have to trust but verify, ask a lot of questions, dig, make sure you've got objective people advising you, because if you have a bunch of people advising you that have a lot to gain by you making a decision and signing on the dotted line on something that's unrealistic because it benefits the organization that's selling you that vision, then that's a problem. And the reason they do that, by the way, is they don't want, someone who's trying to sell you software, especially when we're talking about tens of millions of dollars or hundreds of millions of dollars in this case. The system integrator and the software vendors typically don't want to scare you. They don't want to create doubt or uncertainty. They want to encourage you and say, hey, this is great. This, our product is a great solution, blah, blah, blah. And that's great. You want to have that positivity, but you also have to have that grain of salt that says, yeah, but it's going to be hard. It's going to take us longer than what's being proposed, or it's going to cost us more. And you just have to be realistic about that, because if you have a realistic plan, you're more likely to make the right decisions and do things right. And it's much easier to grapple with the fact that it's going to cost you more time and money than expected. It's a lot easier to deal with that issue up front than it is when you're halfway or 2/3 or all the way through the project. And then the other thing I'd say is make sure that you have control of the project. Make sure you've got the project governance in place to manage your system integrators and your consultants, rather than the system integrators and consultants managing you. And that's something that oftentimes gets backwards with these D365 projects, is you just sort of outsource the entire thing, and suddenly you lose control of the project. Suddenly, before you know it, you look up, you've got 200 consultants on a project billing by the hour, and the meter is just getting out of control, and the costs are getting out of control with, in many cases, questionable business value. So you've got to make sure that you take ownership and control of the project. Just like if you're going to have a house built, you wouldn't just tell a general contractor and some architects and some plumbers and electricians to go build whatever they feel like building. You're going to want to have an active role in sort of signing off on the design and being involved in the design and checking up on the house, physically going to look at it every so often, make sure it's being built the way you want. And that's the same way you should treat a D365 implementation. Make sure that you are actively involved and that you're controlling and making adjustments where you need to along the way.
For sure. And I know that this is something we may get into later with our guest here, but with projects like this that are so big, how important is it that these companies choose the correct Microsoft D365 partner?
Well, it's really important. And, you want to make sure that you have not only people that are knowledgeable of Microsoft, but are knowledgeable of just how to run a project and how to integrate technology with people and processes, and, can, understand operations and all that good stuff. So that's part of it. The other part of it, though, is cultural fit. If you've got a really big, massive system integrator or reseller that's going to outnumber you, that may not be a healthy or effective relationship. It may be better to go look at a larger tier 2 player, or in some cases, for some organizations that are in the middle market, it makes more sense to go find a smaller integrator. So, you want to look at kind of where your leverage is and how you're going to work best. What kind of company are you going to work best with? What's the best cultural fit? Certainly what's their knowledge base. But honestly speaking, other than the dynamic of getting really junior resources on projects where they don't know what they're doing because they're just out of college or whatever, setting that aside, most of the time, knowledge of the product is the least of the worries on a project. The lack of knowledge of D365 is typically not why the projects fail. It's typically because of other things, many of the things that Metcash seem to face there as well. But yes, choosing the right partner is very important, which is why, we've got a guest here today that can help us unpack that and help us identify some of the best ways to identify the best partner that's going to work best for your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited to hear what Rick has to say today about finding the right partner for D365 implementations.
Yeah, absolutely. So our first guest on our first episode here is going to be Rick McCutcheon, and he's a guy that is very close to the Microsoft partner community. And we thought we'd have him on the show to chat about how to find and navigate, or how to find the best partner, how to navigate all the different options that are out there. Microsoft in particular has a very broad and diverse partner base, for better or for worse. Sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes it can be a liability. So we want to really understand how to navigate that. So we're going to bring him on the show here in just a moment to talk about that. But first, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more of the Journey to D365 podcast.
If you are involved in any sort of digital transformation or business change initiative, you will want to download the Digital Transformation Report. With its comprehensive overview of business and technology trends and best practices, this report is a must-have guide for any transformation project or executive team. Download this free report by visiting Third Stage Consulting at thirdstage-consulting.com. You can also visit our website to learn more about us or download independent reports, videos, and other best practices. Again, visit thirdstage-consulting.com today to learn how you can take your transformation to the third stage of success.
Are you looking for ways to promote your product or service to enterprise technology decision makers and influencers throughout the world, like the ones who listen to this podcast? Major Tom Productions creates media, events, and influencer marketing for B2B technology providers. Our productions are exciting, educational, disruptive, and effective. Most importantly, they create results. Our content is unlike any other in this industry, engaging, influential, and trusted by technology buyers and influencers throughout the world. Each month, our productions reach hundreds of thousands of targeted buyers and decision makers who trust and engage with our honest and tech-agnostic content. With long-tail viral results and engagement with our content, Major Tom Productions provides a way to reach your target market and create awareness, calls to action, and a connection with potential customers. So collaborate with us today. Learn how we can feature your product or service on podcasts such as Transformation Ground Control, Journey to S/4HANA, and Journey to Dynamics 365. We can also feature your brand on our YouTube channel called Digital Transformation with Eric Kimberling, which boasts over 100,000 subscribers and over 2 million video views per year. You can also participate in our in-person events, including our Digital Stratosphere Conference. Contact us today to learn more. We can tailor a marketing campaign that works for you. We look forward to helping more people learn more about and become engaged with your brand.
Hello, welcome back to episode number 1 of the Journey to D365 podcast. My name is Eric Kimberling here at Darian Fiakuski. You can find new episodes of this show every week by going to journeytod365.com. And at that website, you can see past episodes. You can also subscribe and follow the podcast wherever you prefer to listen or watch. Again, that's journeytod365.com. This show is produced by Major Tom Productions and sponsored by Third Stage Consulting. So our next guest, or our first guest of the first episode, I should say, is Rick McCutcheon. He's going to be on the show here today, chatting with me about how to navigate the D365 partner community and how to find the best partner in the space to make sure that your implementation is successful. With all that being said, Rick, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Eric. It's a pleasure being on your podcast.
Yeah, I've listened to your podcast as well. I'm going to ask you about that in a second. You've got a great show that you host as well. But before I get to that, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background in this whole world of Microsoft Dynamics.
Well, I can say I'm a CRM guy. Been in CRM business for over 25 years now. Got started back in the 90s when we had things called contact management. Then we became Salesforce automation. And then all of a sudden someone said, we're going to call it CRM. And I said, okay, we'll call it CRM. And off we go. So I had a company called Archer Systems. We merged with another company around 2000. And I kind of played around a little bit in the Salesforce.com world, NetSuite, SalesLogix world, but then I kind of landed when Microsoft came out with their Dynamics CRM product around 2004.
Great. So you've been in the space for quite some time. You've seen a lot of change, I imagine, a lot of evolution of the product and the ecosystem and all that good stuff.
A lot of things changed, but a lot of things stay the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before we get to the things that have changed and the things that have stayed the same, I also want to make sure that we talk about your Partner Talks podcast. And this is how I discovered you and learned about you. Tell us about the podcast. First of all, tell us about the podcast.
So Partner Talks is a show that I developed probably around 2020. So we were, playing around with the idea that, I was being invited on to these other podcasts. I'm a Microsoft MVP, did a lot of speaking at all the Microsoft conferences, especially around the partner conferences. And people were interviewing me. I'm going, well, it doesn't look that hard. So I went on YouTube and learned how to do it and got a microphone and got some software and started interviewing some of my friends that worked for Microsoft. And we figured it out and we started producing it once a week, and we just passed the 200 mark. So these are short format, around 10 minutes each. And it's really talking to Microsoft partners, Microsoft employees, and other people in our ecosystem that are influencers about the world of business applications, which we know as Dynamics in the Microsoft world. And they just tell me about their business and who they are and what they do.
Yeah. And so that's why you're the perfect guest for this topic here today, talking about the ecosystem and how to find the right partner and how to navigate this complex and robust Microsoft ecosystem that they've built. But based on all these, you said 200 episodes, right? You just hit your 200th episode?
Yes, we just passed the 200th.
Do you have one in particular that sort of stands out as a most memorable, or maybe just your favorite guest or discussion or topic that you covered in that podcast?
No, but you'll see some of the longer ones I have. So some will go on 12, 15, 20 minutes. And we just start to roll. I get on a good subject with somebody, and then you'll see some that are 3, 4, 5 minutes, right? People, tell me who they are and what they do, and there's not much more to it. So I think if you look at the ones that are my longer format, probably going to be the best ones.
Yeah. Well, good. So we'll make sure the audience here checks out that podcast as well. And again, that's called Partner Talks Podcast with Rick McCutcheon. So I guess just as getting started here on this whole thread of understanding and navigating the Microsoft Dynamics ecosystem, let's start off by talking about how important is it to find the right partner? I mean, Dynamics is a great product, right? Let's say we've all agreed that this is what we're going to implement in our organization. We're excited about it, but we know we need help. How important is it to find the right partner? Are they all kind of the same, or, is there a big variation?
Well, I think it's crucial, right, to find the right partner, because, we use the term Dynamics and we use it loosely because Dynamics, kind of covers the ERP and the CRM products that Microsoft offers. So on the ERP side, we've got the older products like Great Plains and Navision, which now Navision's kind of morphed into Business Central, which is their sort of mid-market play. And then you've got the enterprise finance and operations. So that's the ERP side, and I'm a CRM guy, right? So I played on the CRM side, which this is complicated, but it's built on what they call Dataverse. Which is its low-code engine, which they use in the Power Apps world. So when you're looking to deploy Dynamics 365, sales, customer service, field service, those are all going to be Dataverse products. So you need to make sure that you have a partner that is very skilled with Dataverse and understands what we call first-party apps, which are the ones that I just mentioned.
Yeah, and the thing that I find so fascinating about the Microsoft world, the Microsoft Dynamics world, is how they've built such a broad and diverse and robust ecosystem. I mean, there are a ton of resellers out there, a ton of VARs and ISVs, which I'm going to come back to what an ISV is here in a few minutes. But compared to other systems, like when you look at SAP and Oracle and NetSuite and Workday, they have their own ecosystems, which are fairly robust. But I would argue that Microsoft has the most robust ecosystem in the enterprise technology space, simply because most of the selling is happening through their partners, and Microsoft has sort of not a hands-off approach, but it's very decentralized. They allow their ecosystem to flourish, but with that comes a lot of inequity or variation in the capabilities of different partners. Have you seen that as well? Or this is just my opinion of being independent and being agnostic.
So when we start to look at the Microsoft partner ecosystem and why it's developed, I'm going to say there's probably 100,000 partners that do B2B type business, that are organizations out there. So when we start to look at Dynamics or business applications, it starts to narrow. Right. And you're going to really find that, the Great Plains partners specialize in that area. Business Central partners and Nav partner specialize in that area. And, CRM, CE partners specialize in their own areas. What's nice about Microsoft is they're partner friendly. So I can come in and say, I want to be a Microsoft partner. I can go to the partner portal and get all the information I need, all the training I need, all the software I need, everything I need to start a business. And there's lots of support, and there's things like Microsoft Learn. So I can come in and really specialize in that product and learn everything about it. And then there's this whole ecosystem of user communities, technical boards, all that built around the product. So if I decide one day I'm going to build a Business Central business, I can go and do that. And the infrastructure's there. There's no real barriers for doing it. And I think that's why we're seeing more and more partners that want to sell business applications come into our world.
Yeah. And do you have any sense of how many resellers there are in the Microsoft Dynamics space worldwide, or maybe just in North America?
It's not an official number, but my searches on LinkedIn, I think we're probably around 20,000.
Okay. In worldwide or just in North America?
I think that's global.
Okay.
That do, maybe it could be a little higher when we start to look at Business Central, which are kind of the key ones: Business Central, the CRM, CE, and the F&O space.
Okay.
But there's a big movement happening out there, Eric, that we should talk about, and that's Power Apps.
Okay.
Right. So when we start to look at the Power Platform, which they took the low-code engine under the CRM product and they took it out, and they decided we're going to build a low-code engine that any developer can use to build applications, and they don't have to buy what we call the first-party apps. So we're seeing a lot of the modern workplace, which is the Office partners, learning that product and coming into our space. So a lot of people that were building on SharePoint at one time, you'll see them now coming in and becoming Power Platform experts, Power Apps experts. So we're seeing that business applications world of the core first-party apps kind of sitting here, but it's a much bigger world when we start to look at, who's coming in from the modern workplace to start working with Power Platform. And that's why we're seeing when they have a conference around Power Platform, they're probably, and this is just a guesstimate, 50% of those people come out of my world, which is the business applications world, and probably half of them come out of the modern workplace. So that opens it up to many, many more partners.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, whether it's 20,000 or 30,000, whatever the number really is, I mean, that's a lot of partners to potentially navigate. And I know there's a lot of smaller shops that specialize in one industry or one geography or one application within the Microsoft Dynamics suite. So there's a lot of variables that go into sort of filtering out which ones are the right fit just from a skill set perspective. But when you back up and look at these tens of thousands of different partners that are out there, what are some of the top characteristics, top 2 or 3 qualities or skill sets or characteristics that buyers should be looking for when they're trying to evaluate these different partners?
I think it depends on the customer. How sophisticated a buyer are you? Is this your first deployment, or are you on your third deployment? We're also seeing a lot of our customers build a skill set internally to work with the product. So they have, maybe 4, 5, 10 people working in their organization, depending on the size, supporting the Dynamics installation. So they've got a good skill set, and a lot of them will bring in a partner when they want to do something very specific. So let's say I was going to put in field service. Whether it's Microsoft's field service or more advanced product like Resco's, I'm going to get somebody with some experience around that field service product because my group doesn't have it. Or let's say we're going to start moving into our call centers because you're going to start integrating into a lot of ISV products. So you probably want to bring in that skill set for somebody who works in that world. And you'll find when you get into Dynamics, like I was a Salesforce automation guy, right? That's pretty much all I did. Someone had a customer service project or field service project. I got a Rolodex. Here's people that can help you. It's not me, right? Because I had my, my niche. And you're going to find a lot of the smaller partners have a niche, but they're tremendous at it, right? And they probably have a small team of 5 or 10 people that have been doing this for a dozen years who are very, very good. Where sometimes you get into a bigger firm, you don't know who you're going to get, right? So if I'm doing a field service rollout, what's the resume of the person that is going to be working with my team?
And, one of those skill sets, I presume, is the technical skill sets. How competent are they in understanding these different applications and how to deploy the most recent versions of it? So what are some ways that a project team or a company can assess and evaluate the technical competencies of the partners they might be considering?
So I'm going to back up here because what you said is, you need the technical chops, right? I need somebody who understands the product. But in Microsoft world, we're in this Microsoft cloud now, right? So there's a lot of ways to do things, right? Where am I going to store my data? That's a question that you can answer 3 or 4 different ways. What's the best for me? So I think, look at someone with that technical skill set, but also someone who understands, have a broader understanding of the Microsoft cloud and what components should I bring in to do what, because they all integrate fairly well together. Also, if you're doing an ERP installation, there's going to be anywhere from 5 to 15 ISV products attached to it. So you need somebody who understands the ISV ecosystem, because that's going to save you a lot of time and money on what you need to deploy. So it's not as straightforward as, do I know how to build everything? Because you'll get some partners that want to build everything, right? And I think we want to avoid that in this day and age.
I'm here with Rick McCutcheon. We're talking about how to find the best D365 implementation partner. I've got a lot more to cover. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with more of the Journey to D365 podcast. I recently published my first book. It's called The Final Countdown: Strategies to Reach the Third Stage of Digital Transformation. And I wrote this book because I really wanted to find a concise way to share some of my knowledge around digital strategy and how to get started on a digital transformation journey. So in this book, I cover 3 different sections. I cover the people, process, and technology aspects of transformation, with the idea that it's meant to be a starting point, a launching pad for organizations and team members that are going through digital transformations. So I encourage you to buy this book. You can get it electronically, you can get it paperback, or you can get it in hard copy, as I'm holding here in front of you. You can get it by going to thefinalcountdown.com. You can also search for it on Amazon if you shop at Amazon. Otherwise, just go to thefinalcountdown.com. Love to hear your feedback on this book as well. So I hope you check it out and hope you enjoy.
I'm excited to share our newly released 2024 Digital Enterprise Operations Report. This free download is available on the Third Stage website at thirdstage-consulting.com. This report is truly packed full of technology-independent and agnostic insights for your project to ensure that you're strategically optimized for success. Download your copy today with the QR code in front of me, or visit our website for more details.
Hello, welcome back to the Journey to D365 podcast. My name is Eric Kimberling here with Darian Fiakuski. You can find new episodes of this show at journey2d365.com. The show is produced by Major Tom Productions and sponsored by Third Stage Consulting, which is an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their D365 implementations, as well as their non-Microsoft digital transformations as well. I'm here with Rick McCutcheon. We're talking about how to navigate the partner community and how to find the best partners within the Microsoft community. The topic I want to come back, that I want to dig into a little bit more, and that is the whole ISV concept. Before I ask you some questions around that, just tell us what is an ISV and how does that unique to the Microsoft ecosystem?
So it's independent software vendor, and in the business applications, it's really organizations that are in the CRM world. We saw a lot of companies building on the low-code engine and building applications, whether in the first-party CE application or building something in Power Apps. So with the low-code engine, they're building some sort of ISV product that is kind of embedded in the technology. We're also seeing organizations who, have partner relationship management portal, and they just want to attach it, for example. So they write integrations and they still keep their technology separate, and they attach to the Microsoft technology. So it's a very interesting world. Now, on another part of that, we've got a group that are pure ISVs where they've got their own technology, but we also have a group called what I call hybrids. And these are partners who are traditionally, I'll call them SI, systems integrators, who have verticalized. And there's some people that have done the wine industry. Another one I was talking to a couple of weeks ago was doing the recipe management, right, for big food companies, right? So they find a vertical and they customize the app to fit that vertical and then sell it as an ISV. So they're still selling you a first-party app, but it may be customized in a way where they can drop it right into your business. So it's a complex world, but it's a pretty exciting one right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that is exciting. And how important is it for an organization to consider an ISV, or more specifically, I guess it's not even just that you might want an ISV because it's an ISV and it's different, it's innovative. It's because the ISV has built a product that might be more specific to your industry or your specific needs. How important is that industry experience and flexibility and tailoring of the product for your specific industry?
I think it's something you really need to consider, because they're going to save you a lot of time and a lot of money. And they're also, you're going to get a demo of a finished product. Whereas if I go to somebody and they're going to custom build it, I can give you a demo of the product and here's what I'm going to do for you. Or if I go in and I find an ISV who's done the wine industry, I'm looking at what functionality they've built in. And with our technology on the CE side, low code, they can customize that app. So they can give it to you 70% finished and then customize the 30% of what you need. So I think it's becoming more and more important. And that's why we're seeing such a growth in the app source platform that Microsoft's put out there. Because last time I counted, I think we're getting close to 2,000 ISVs.
Okay.
So there's lots of technology, lots of information out there for you to research.
Yeah, that's a lot of options. I mean, you look at the 20,000 resellers, a couple thousand of those are going to be ISVs. Do you ever come across companies or organizations that find an ISV product that they like, but they don't feel like that ISV partner is the ideal implementation partner? In other words, there might be someone else who's like just better. They like the team better. They like the general service competencies better, but they like the product of this ISV provider. Do you ever see a conflict there?
I won't call it a conflict. We're seeing more what we call P2P action out there right now, partner to partner. So the pure ISVs that I talked about before that, we built some technology onto Dynamics, they're looking for partners to implement because they don't want to get tied down into these big projects. And even a lot of the ones that have done hybrid projects prefer to partner with somebody because I'm trying to sell more of these wine industry projects, right? So once we get into a Dynamics installation, then, the customer probably I want help with Dynamics, but also what else are we going to be doing with Power Platform? What are we going to do with storage? And then we've got AI, right? So what's the AI outcome, or what do we want to be able to do with AI? So it becomes a much bigger project, and that partner may be attached 2, 3, 5, and forever, right, to that client as they start to build out this technology, where an ISV really wants to get their application in and kind of move on to the next one.
Right. Yeah, it makes total sense. That's interesting, that partner to partner concept, because you don't see that, or I don't see that a lot in other ecosystems. When I look at other big enterprise tech players, I don't see that often. It's a lot more cutthroat, competitive, siloed, whatever you want to call it. So it's interesting to see there's a little bit more collaboration, which I imagine leads to more innovation and more options for customers that are deploying Microsoft Dynamics.
Yes, and they're more likely to tell you that here's what I do, here's what Eric does. He's a specialist. I'll do my piece. I'm going to bring Eric in to do his piece. So I think we're getting more collaboration. And if you go to a Microsoft partner conference like Directions, which is really a partner conference for that mid-market group, more's done at the bar at night, right? Because you walk in there and all these business owners are there, hundreds of them, and it's just one conversation after another. So it's very different than other ecosystems this way.
Right. Yeah. Very, very interesting. So what are some emerging trends in the ecosystem of Microsoft Dynamics that businesses should be aware of?
Well, Microsoft's really pushing the AI, and they call it copilots, right? And I think they've got over 100 copilots built today. So that's their big push as a business. But I think from a customer perspective, I'm starting to do some sessions. I do some thought leadership stuff for MS Dynamics World, and we're planning our first Fabric, which is the reporting platform that Microsoft's pushing out there. It kind of spun out of the Power BI world. We've got 3 times as many people showing up for a Fabric event than any other type of event we're doing now. So Fabric's a very hot topic. Also, data is a very hot topic because, companies now realize that, we want to use something like Fabric to run across our organization to be able to report. We want to also be able to use these AI tools both safely, securely, and have the data make sense. Then I got to clean up my data. So I think we're going to see over the next 3 to 5 years, big projects around data and getting their data ready for that next phase of digital transformation.
I'm here with Rick McCutcheon. We're talking about how to find the best D365 implementation partner. I've got a lot more to cover. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be back with more of the Journey to D365 podcast.
I'm excited to share our newly released 2024 Digital Enterprise Operations Report. This free download is available on the Third Stage website at thirdstage-consulting.com. This report is truly packed full of technology-independent and agnostic insights for your project to ensure that you're strategically optimized for success. Download your copy today with the QR code in front of me or visit our website for more details.
Hi, this is Eric Kimberling with Third Stage Consulting and your host of Transformation Ground Control. I want to encourage you to read our Guide to Organizational Change Management. It's a free report or free guide that we published. It's one that I actually wrote that talks about best practices and lessons learned as it relates to change management. So as you know, on this podcast, we cover a lot of stuff related to the human sides of change, organizational change management, including training, communications, org design, all kinds of stuff as it relates to change management. So if you're trying to learn more about change management or you're looking for more direction and ideas on how to get started on your change management strategy and your overall journey, be sure to check out this guide. You can read it by scanning the QR code on the screen in front of you or in the links below for this particular podcast episode. You can find a link to take you to the page that will allow you to register to go ahead and download that and read it for free. So be sure to check it out. It's the Guide to Organizational Change Management, written by yours truly. I hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think and hope you enjoy the rest of this episode. Hello, welcome back to the Journey to D365 podcast. My name is Eric Kimberling here at Darian Fiakuski. You can find new episodes of this show at journey2d365.com. The show is produced by Major Tom Productions and sponsored by Third Stage Consulting, which is an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their D365 implementations as well as their non-Microsoft digital transformations as well. I'm here with Rick McCutcheon. We're talking about how to navigate the partner community and how to find the best partners within the Microsoft community. One of the unintended secondary benefits of this whole AI movement, I think, is that focus on data. That's something I think organizations have struggled with for decades. And now all of a sudden, I think organizations are saying, wow, we really do need to focus on our data if we're going to take advantage of and keep up with this artificial intelligence thing that's happening right now in the marketplace.
And I think we're going to see more announcements. I saw one this week where Microsoft's partnering with a data provider. So I think we're going to see more and more of Microsoft really partnering and paying attention to how do we get this data in shape so people can leverage these AI tools.
Yeah, that makes total sense. What are some of the common mistakes then that you see organizations make when they're choosing a partner or maybe multiple partners? What are some of the pitfalls or advice you would give of people telling them not to do those things when evaluating partners?
I think they don't spend enough time on, we'll call it the soft skills, I suppose, as opposed to the tech chops of the partner, right? Mm-hmm. We got the technology, but it's really, how are you going to do the initial planning with me, right? How are you going to help me with requirements? This is really tough because, as an MVP, and I've been independent a long time, most of the projects I went into, they wouldn't hire me to do a big project. they usually hired me to do a project that was stuck, right? People weren't using it in CRM. That's notorious, but a lot of it was just poor requirements and poor design, right? So how are you going to help me with planning? How are you going to help me with requirements and design? I'm sure you can do the build, right? And then what does the user acceptance look like? Like, how are we going to deploy this? How are we going to train on them? And how are we going to make sure that we're successful with this? So I kind of broke it down into segments, and I actually was teaching a course for the User Group Association for a long time around how do you plan a CRM project, and I would just plan it into all these modules. And I think as a client, that's what you need to do. When you're talking to a partner, it's not all about the tech, it's about the total deployment of the app.
Let's pull on that a little bit, or dig into that a little bit. I mean, you talk about planning requirements as two, planning and requirements as two threads or competencies that are just as, maybe even more important than the technical chops that you talk about. What about, other things, or what are some of the other competencies you want to look for, like around program management or change management training, whatever? Are there other soft, intangible sorts of things you want to be looking at when you're evaluating partners?
From a customer side, there's one other point I want to make is who owns, and I'll talk about Salesforce automation and CRM. Who owns the project? Is it IT or is it business? And if we go to business, who owns it within the business? And when I would go in and there would be a poor deployment or a problem deployment, I'd sit around with some executives and I say, okay, who owns the project? And they would all look at the IT director, who would look back at them and go, look, at this thing technically runs perfectly. Your people aren't using it, type of thing. So I think, planning and building and understanding the team from the internal team who's going to work on this, and who's the partner team, like who are you going to bring on this? And one of the things I started doing quite a long time ago, which I really thought helped, was let's look at a project plan. Like, I want you to give me a proposal, but I also want you to give me a project plan. And in that project plan, I need you to kind of detail everything you're going to do for the money, right, that you're asking for me. But I also want another column here saying, what are the requirements from the business? Who am I going to have to provide to work on this, and how many hours? Because I think a lot of projects got out of sync, or still get out of sync, because the partner comes in and says, I'm going to do all this, but the customer can't keep up, right? Because a lot of these people have full-time jobs and they're trying to deploy a CRM system part-time. And they just can't keep up with the project, so things get out of whack, and that becomes trouble because partners start moving resources around. I can't have an architect sitting there, right? This person's costing me a lot of money. I've got to move them on to another project. So that's where things sort of get funny and get out of sync. So really, what's the planning around this? And, we talk a lot about building a center of excellence. What is a center of excellence going to look like that's going to drive a lot of the project and what we do?
Right. And how do you center of excellence is a great term, and it's a great sort of follow-up to how do you ensure that, assuming you find the right partner, they're the partner that's going to take you the distance to get you to go live and get you to adopt the technology. How do you transfer some of that knowledge, or what are some tips to ensure that you're not overly dependent on that partner, and that you can self-sustain yourself after that partner leaves? In other words, how do you do that knowledge transfer, and how do you build that center of excellence? Is that something that is that incumbent on the partner to do that for you, or is that incumbent on you, the implementing organization, to figure out how you're going to handle that?
A good partner is going to tell you, right, what you're going to need to run the system. And so I don't do a lot of projects anymore. I kind of do practice management and ISV management, but once in a while I get pulled into a project from the user community. And I'll look at things and I'll say, okay, you're going to deploy this. This is a fairly large deployment. What's your team going to look like post-deployment? Who's going to be on it, right? You need trainers, you need administrators, you need technical people that are part of this project that are going to remain, because this project doesn't have a start and a beginning. This project will continue on for months, maybe years. So you've got to kind of treat it that way. And so I did a lot of work with the user group communities over the years. And I'm in Toronto, so I organized the Canadian National CRM User Group. And I'm organizing now an enterprise international for enterprise customers. So when we do a event, right, we just did what we call the Doug Dynamics Con Live in Denver. So I meet people that are very successful, that are on their 3rd or 4th deployment. They'll come to a user group community with their admins who admin the system. They'll come with the technical people that work on the system and the business owner. So the most successful ones show up at the community meetings with, those groups of people, because they're all learning something different, right? And they're talking, and they'll go in and talk to other customers, and the business owner wants to talk to the business, like who owns the project. The technical people, they want to go to the technical deep dive, and the admins want to talk to other admins. So how do you get it going? So I think when you start to build that culture internally, it's very important. And if you find a partner, and there's some good ones out there that'll help you do that, those are the partners you want to work with. The ones that want to kind of give you half the information are the ones that, I'm a little worried about, because it seems that they want you dependent on them for a long time. And I don't think that's the way to go. I think is to get the customer up and running and working with that technology so you can move on to the next deployment, the next project for them.
Yeah, you don't want to create that learned helplessness or that unhealthy dependency on a partner versus just you taking ownership and you being able to sustain that longer term.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what kind of closing advice or tips would you have for businesses that are currently in the process of selecting a partner or reseller or ISV in the D365 space? I mean, what sort of closing tips would you leave us with?
I would really do my due diligence. I'd look in a couple places. I would see, are you involved with the user group communities? Because I find that the best partners are very involved with user groups, right? So they're giving back something all the time. Also, you're going to see, are the employees there long-term? Right? How long have they been with you? What's their technical background? And in this Microsoft world, do you have any MVPs working for you? Because that's the most valuable professionals, and that can be someone who works for a customer or works for a partner. But companies that invest in their people will have MVPs there. If they're not investing in their people, the MVPs don't stick around, right? So do you have MVPs? And then, let me talk to some of your customers that are like me, the same size as me, the same type of deployment, whether it's local, regional, or international. I want to talk to other ones because maybe you're too big a partner for me. Maybe I just have a small project. I probably need somebody my own size. But if I'm going to be an international deployment, I've got to work with somebody who can support that deployment, whether directly, like work with one of the GSIs, we call them in our space, or do they belong to part of a network? And now there's a lot of these P2P networks popping up of smaller regional partners working together to do international deployments.
Yeah. Well, thank you for helping us unpack this whole thing that we call the Microsoft ecosystem. And there's a lot to it. And like I said, there's a lot of choices, a lot of great options in the space. It's just a matter of, the difficult part is the fact that it's just a matter of navigating that and trying to figure out which ones are the right fit. So I appreciate your perspective, and you have a pretty unique perspective given that you work with so many of these different partners and you see so many of them throughout your work that you do now. So I appreciate your time here today.
And if people want to reach out to me on LinkedIn, I can direct them to a user group community that I think can help them get started, on their Dynamics journey.
Yeah, that's great. And yeah, we'll make sure people follow you on LinkedIn. And just for those that are listening to the audio only version, it's Rick McCutcheon, and the last name is spelled McCutcheon. So there's an E in there that's silent, but it's McCutcheon, but with an E in there that makes it sound like McCutcheon, which is how I wanted to pronounce it at first. But is there a website, or how do people find your podcast, Partner Talks?
PartnerTalks.com.
All right. Easy enough. PartnerTalks.com. Rick McCutcheon, thanks for being here today.
Okay, Eric, thank you for having me, and I hope to be talking to you more about the Microsoft ecosystem in the future.
All right. Thank you, Rick. Great conversation. That was good stuff. Appreciate having you here today. And that was very helpful to understand and help us navigate this whole partner community that is very complex in the Microsoft world. So I really appreciate your insights. And we're going to build on some of these concepts or debrief on some of these concepts here in just a moment. But first, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more of the Journey to D365 podcast. Hi, this is Eric Kimberling with Third Stage Consulting, and I want to invite you to join our annual tech agnostic conference called Digital Stratosphere. Digital Stratosphere is a conference that features some of the industry's brightest minds, greatest thinkers, and it's a great opportunity to network with peers, other industry people, other CIOs, other project team members that are going through digital transformations or ERP implementations. We've got a great lineup of speakers this year. It's a 3-day event, a lot of great entertainment, networking opportunities. I'll be there as one of the keynote speakers, along with some of my favorite speakers in the industry as well, both within Third Stage Consulting, but also outside the company as well. So I encourage you to check it out and learn more. You can go to stratosphere2024.com to learn more about the event. You can see the agenda, the way it's shaping up, and you can see some of the past testimonials of people that have attended. And the event is October 2nd through the 4th, 2024. It's going to be based in Denver, Colorado, downtown Denver, beautiful downtown Denver in the fall, which is a great time to visit Denver if you haven't been. Again, stratosphere2024.com. Check out the agenda. Check out our early bird pricing for passes. And the other beautiful things, if you can't be here in person in Denver, which we hope you can, but if you can't, you can also join remotely as well. We have virtual passes available as well, so you're able to join from wherever in the world you might want to join from. So stratosphere2024.com, check it out, and I hope to see you there.
The last thing you want to have happen is for your digital transformation to end up in court. I've been doing this for 20 years and I have seen everything. My name is Marcus Harris. I'm a software and technology attorney focusing my practice on drafting and negotiating software-related contracts and litigating software disputes across the country. Feel free to reach out to us at taftlaw.com. We'd love to talk to you about the litigation process and what you can expect.
Hello, welcome back to the Journey to D365 podcast, episode number 1. My name is Eric Kimberling here at D3 McCutcheon, and we just had Rick McCutcheon on the show talking about the partner community and how to find the best partner for an implementation. What were some of your takeaways from that conversation, Darian?
Yeah, I think he provided some really good insights on what companies should look for when trying to select a partner for D365 implementations. I think one thing that stood up to me is how crucial he made it seem, which it is, to find the right partner, because that covers, you want to make sure you have a partner that he said that covers all the ERP and CRM products that Microsoft offers. I know you said earlier in this episode that knowledge is usually something that you don't necessarily need to be concerned about when it comes to hiring a partner. Most companies you hire will have adequate knowledge. It really just comes down to that cultural fit within your company and the company you're hiring. So Eric, can you kind of expand on what specific things then should you look for when selecting a partner when it comes down to the cultural fits? What are some specific things maybe companies could ask or look for?
Yeah, I think the first thing, and this is something that actually a lot of our clients do before they become clients. In fact, we encourage them to do this, and that is to, ask to talk to the team that you're going to have on your project. Not just the partner or the senior person that's selling you the project or selling you the services, but the actual team that's going to be assigned to it. And that's a first step to not only making sure you've got the right team to start, but it's also creating a mindset within your own internal team that, hey, we're in charge of this. Yes, we're bringing in experts to help us, but we have a sort of a final say on who would be on this project. A lot of times you find that, hey, we may have picked the right partner, but 5 of the 6 people that are being proposed are great, but this one person that's on the project doesn't really feel like they're going to work well with our team. So let's look at other options from that same company potentially on how they can help. So, or who could best fill that role. So I think asking to speak with and see resumes of people that are going to be on the project, that is in your, that's your right as a customer to do that. So that's one thing that I would do. And then, also just, kind of walking through less questions about what do you know about Microsoft and more about the style and the methodology that the firm would use. For example, you can ask some questions, behavioral type questions like, what if we have 4 different ways of doing the same process within our organization? How are you going to help us navigate that decision of whether we keep all 4 processes or do we we standardize one? Now, you want to watch out for real boilerplate answers like, well, we've got best practices in D365 and that'll solve all of our problems, because that's not real, and it's not effective typically to do that. So you want to make sure that it makes sense, that the approach that the team is taking is going to make sense, and it kind of fits your goals and the way you operate as an organization. So I'd say those are two of the big things you could do to find the right cultural fit.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what would you say, or what would you recommend to a company that is maybe looking to implement Microsoft Dynamics and maybe they never have had it before? How do they get up to speed quickly to learn about what is best for their company?
Well, one thing is, Microsoft has there's a lot of training materials out there that talk about what all the different Microsoft products can do and how they work and that sort of thing. So just educating yourself on your own is one way. But another way would be to make sure that you carve out part of your phase or one of your work streams within the project to educate your team. Have your system integrator come in and train your people even before you start the project, train them on how D365 works. They don't need to become certified experts necessarily, but the more they know about D365, the more they can sort of get their head around the product and what it can and can't do, the more effective the internal team is going to be. So I think it's a great question, because you do want to train up front. You don't want to just wait until you're about to go live, because if you do that, if you wait until you go live to really train people in mass, then you've sort of ceded control of the project right away. You sort of said, okay, we don't know D365. We're not training ourselves. You, the expert, the outside experts do know. So they're going to be the ones making decisions, and you need to be the ones making decisions. So you've got to level that playing field a bit by educating yourself as much as you can. But one of the best ways is just to ask the partner you work with to provide some training up front before you really get into the design, the build, the testing, and all that stuff.
Yeah, totally. That makes a lot of sense for any newer companies to Microsoft Dynamics. But overall, I thought this episode was a great way to kick off this new season. I feel like hopefully the audience learned a lot. I know I learned a lot. I thought Rick was a great guest today.
Yeah, he was really good. And we're going to have more great guests on the show in the next few episodes. Next week in episode 2, we'll have one of our senior consultants from the Third Stage team who has a lot of experience with implementing D365. His name's Tony Ford. He'll be on talking about the pros and cons of Microsoft D365. We'll have someone else from the Microsoft community in episode 3. Her name's Mary Myers. She'll be on the show talking about Power Platform and Copilot in D365 implementations. And then episode 4, coming up in just a few weeks, we'll have Jeff Nelson from the Third Stage consulting team, another Microsoft D365 expert. He'll be on talking about lessons from successful D365 implementation. So that's just a sampling of some of the guests we have coming up here in future episodes. So you want to stick around, stay tuned, and listen here to these episodes as they come out in the coming weeks. Again, you can go to journey2d365.com. That's the podcast page where you can learn more. You can listen right there on the website. You can also subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you wish by going to that same website. So be sure to bookmark journey2d365.com. Hope you enjoyed this first episode, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Hope you have a great week in the meantime, and we will speak soon.